October, we will see them. And I think that anyone who sees them will realize that they offer, the train will not go until all the doors are closed. And you see that in all the operations around the world. So we're hoping that increases the level of comfort and lack of fear from our users.
We hope so, because it's a genuine concern for our mothers and daughters and sons that are travelling every day to work and to school with our trains, Mr. Dlamini. I hope that the issues and the communication process with commuters who want to then in turn vandalise trains should be improved. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Eben.
Thank you very much. That's Victor Dlamini. He is spokesperson for the South African the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, PRASA. Now, last year in September, the South African trade unions in the Western Cape were set to come up with a solid plan to tackle this transport crisis, they call it, in the province there. This was after rail services in Cape Town were derailed and its members affected. Earlier last year, the union lodged a Section 77 application to the National Economic Development and Labour Council against Metro Rail, the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa and the City of Cape Town. The union charges were that the trains were consistently overcrowded. They posed a danger to workers who often lose money and face disciplinary action because the service was late almost every day. Now, for more on this, we are joined on the line by the man who put this motion forward, COSATU's Western Cape Secretary, Tony Ehrenreich. A very good morning to you, Tony. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
Tony, just give us a quick overview. How difficult is it for the working class to travel by train right now?
Well, there's a systemic problem on the train because the rolling stock is probably more than 35 years old, so they haven't renewed the stock, in spite of them knowing that there were difficulties with breakdowns as the stock is older. There's levels of overcrowding that's way over 200% because in 1997, already they were at 150% capacity, and nothing's been done to address those issues. So this is really a systemic problem related to the way in which Metro Rail has managed the rail services. But of late, the safety issues have become a greater concern. And in part, this is because they're not controlling access into the system. The only point where criminals can enter the system is at the station, and there's not access restriction at the station to ensure that the entire system is safe and that the trains themselves are safe during the journey from the destination. And so all of the points that have been made before as to measures that we can address it, for example, CCTV cameras on board, those cameras we proposed 7 years ago and they could have been fit to the old trains. It's just a matter of Metro Rail appearing to not having the political will to do it, and to be concluding that poor working people's lives are cheap, and accordingly they're not making the action. And that's why COSATU wants to raise the process and the protest on this matter to ensure that it's taken more seriously.
Now, Tony, there's an idea that trains are being vandalised. Our PRASA has just put forward that trains are being vandalised. They put the number more than 200 incidents over the last couple of years, and that this is also affecting service delivery. Why do you think people are vandalising trains in such big numbers then here in South Africa?
Well, trains are being vandalized, and that's completely unacceptable, and wherever we know of instances like that, we must report it to the police and it must be dealt with. But I think the most important step is to take mitigating action from what we know is as part of the systemic crisis, that commuters get frustrated with the delays, with the inevitable stoppages of trains and no advice as to how the service can be improved, and then you do find instances of vandalism. And that has to be attended to. But it's not the fundamental problem on the trains. The fundamental problem is the old rolling stock, the lack of a system that ensures the safety of both the asset as well as the commuters, and that's a problem that's easily within the management competency of Metro Rail if they have the will to do that.
Tony, I want to take you back to the workplace quickly, because I know that's what you guys are working on right now. Tell us about the effect that trains not being on time, trains being constantly late, especially in the morning, the effect is having on the workplace, and tell us about the discussions you've had between employees and employers in this space to come up with a solution, specifically in the Western Cape, I would think.
Well, it is having a devastating effect on workers across the country, but we've taken it up here in the Western Cape. And amongst the things that are troubling workers is that when they come to work late because of the delays of trains, and workers are on the station at 6 in the morning, often the trains only arrive after 7. So this leads to them arriving at work late and disciplinary action and problems of dismissal. Also, the workers are forced to have money from their salaries deduct because they're not at work for those hours. So what you have is a double jeopardy to workers because of the trains being late. Firstly, they have money deducted from the employer because they're not working for that time. And secondly, because the trains are delayed, they have to exit the system when it's stopped between stations, walk to the closest point where they can get a taxi or a bus, and then pay an additional transport, which, as you know, at the moment in the Western Cape, close on to 20% of workers' salary is spent on transport costs. So this just exacerbates that problem. And that's why we have to take action. But it's also having a problem on industry at the moment. Many companies are marginal, given the tough economic times. And if workers are not at work and production is not taking place, it threatens the viability of those companies. So it's a huge issue across the economy, not only for workers, that has to be addressed as an urgency, and there's not the commensurate urgency from the side of Metro Rail. I can make this example to you, that a few years ago, 9 to be exact, Transnet identified the need for additional locomotives and rolling stock to transport the iron ore from Sishen to the ports. Those trains and rolling stock and pulleys have been bought probably 3 years ago. They arrived in South Africa. Now, how is it that the industry and business, you can so quickly order the required trains, but when it comes to the transport of commuters, there's exorbitant times. And even now, the statement that was made by the spokesperson of Metro Rail is inaccurate. Sure, some of the first trains on the pilot will be arriving later this year. They claim around October, November, but we've heard those tales before. But even in terms of their present projections, the trains to Western Cape, where the main problem is, will only arrive in 2018. And this is what Metro Rail conveyed to us in discussion. So there's a whole range of inaccuracies that's got to pull into question the intention and the commitment of Metro Rail, both to communicate to commuters the real state of affairs and the urgency that they have in addressing this crisis.
Tony, thank you very much for joining us today. That's COSATU Western Cape Secretary Tony Ehrenreich giving us, the workers' view with regards to, train services here in South Africa. Now, I can